Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Pilanswood Community Centre for this BHH meeting on the 25th of January 2024. Sorry. The chair isn't available this evening due to personal reasons, and sends her apologies. So we need to elect a chair. As Vice Chair, I am asking for a nomination.
Can I propose that Councillor Holland, as Vice Chair, chairs the meeting?
Thank you. And the seconder? Cllr Cross. All in favour? Thank you. In that case, we will move on now that we have a chair. Some housekeeping before we begin. We are not expecting the fire alarm to go off this evening. If it does, please leave the building through the fire exits and meet outside at the fire assembly point. Councillors will be using tablet devices during this meeting to access agendas. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, and although this is a formal committee meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting, the members of the public that have registered to speak will be invited to speak at the relevant agenda item. People wishing to speak on an item that isn't on the agenda are able to do so before the debate starts. Once the debate has started, however, it is not possible to invite or receive comments from the floor. We want to be as inclusive as possible, but will not tolerate any disruptions to our meeting. Should there be any disruption, we do have the power under the Council's constitution to remove people from the meeting or continue private, neither of which we take lightly or wish to do so. Councillors are reminded that to take part in this meeting, you have to have an open mind so that you can take all relevant considerations presented to the meeting into account in reaching your decision. By attending today, you have decided that you will listen to all points of view expressed by the speakers and public, and are able to participate and cannot be seen to have predetermined any applications. This meeting will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. If any members of the public prefer not to be recorded, then do please contact a member of staff. If you are planning on filming or recording the meeting yourselves, then do please let us know so that we can ensure you are not filming members of the public that do not wish to be filmed. The Chair reserves the right to ask any filming considered intrusive to be stopped. More information is available on the Council's website. Thank you. Also, because we've got a lot of people here tonight, more than we often do, can I ask if you can sort of keep noise to a minimum so that everybody can hear what is going on? We've got microphones, but it's not always easy to hear what's going on when other people are speaking, so that would be appreciated. In that case, we can start the meeting and we move on to apologies, which is item 1. Catherine, we have an apology, I believe.
We have apologies from Councillor Craig.
Thank you. Okay, we now move on to item 2, which is public participation. Do I have any members of the public who wish to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we can move to item 3, declarations of interest. And I have to ask councillors if you have any declarations of interest you wish to make. If so, please indicate now, and when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interests as they occur to you during the meeting by raising your hand. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have a proposer and seconder? Proposed Cllr O'Sullivan, seconded Cllr Cross. All those in favour? Any against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 5, Chair's announcement. I haven't got anything because Tony is not here, so that'll be put over to the next meeting. Item 6 is the report of the local area manager. What's McLean? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. 11 recommendations in my report tonight. I'll just run through them very quickly and then open to questions and discussion. So firstly, is a request to approve the allocation of £6,140 to replace Dragon's Teeth and knee railings at both Priory Road and the Crescent, using our budget reserves. Note the spend of £455 to install a new bin outside the Pylons Woodshops, 20 yards just that way, which is already in. Approve the allocation of £57,000 for the annual Youth Options Programme and the School Holiday Programme, with contributions from reserves budget and also contributions from 3 parish councils in the area. Also to approve the allocation of £18,600 from reserves for the annual Spring Clean project across the 3 locations of Bursledon, Hamble and Hound. Approve the allocation of £3,000 from reserves to increase the tree maintenance budget for this year. Approve the allocation of £3,000 from reserves for Netley Unwrapped 2024. Approve a grant of £12,000 to BDCA to fund a replacement boiler at the Loafers Centre via developer contributions. Approve a grant of £300 from the revenue budget to the volunteers at the Mercury Hub, Library Hub, for an adjustable massage chair. Number 9, to approve the allocation of developer contributions totaling £10,000 to fund replacement bins in Bursledon, Hamble and Hound. Number 10, approve the allocation of £7,500 from the parking revenue budget to introduce a new permit control ticket machine at New Road Car Park Netley. And finally, number 11 is to approve the local area action plan for Bursledon, Hamble and Hound in 24-25. Chair, if I may, just on point number 7 with regards to the boiler at the Loafers Centre. Very late in the day discussions with our asset team, and we've looked at a way of the asset team being able to fund the boiler at the Loafers Centre. So it's really positive news from our perspective, and thanks to the Asset Management Director for his support with that. And then finally, just to stress with the new road, the new road recommendation is subject to a full consultation with local residents in Netley. Thank you, Chair. That's my report.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, can I ask any questions or observations on the report? Councilors.
Can I just say that I'm delighted to hear about the full funding of the boiler, because I know that will be really appreciated by the people who use the centre, the people who work in it, and also the members of the community in Bursledon. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I second that. I agree. It's a real step forward because there was a shortfall which we were worried. Any other comments? Councillor Cross.
Just the one about, was it £3,000 for the maintenance of trees? I'm trying to find it. Approved the allocation from 3,000 reserves the tree maintenance budget. Have we got a budget for maintenance of trees already, or is it in addition to that budget? And are we responsible for the trees in the BH8 area, or is it corporate?
Councillor Cross, you're correct. We do have a budget for trees. There's been a lot of trees come down, unfortunately, in our patch for various reasons.
Yeah.
The recommendation from the street scene team who operate and look after these trees is to put some additional funding in to support the tree clearance and tree support for our area. So yeah, we have a budget for it. It's exceeded that already for this year.
I was just thinking that with the weather, changing weather, we should think about the budget next year to increase it.
Yeah, we
trees maintenance for future use. That's all. Rather than it's ready there, rather than keep drawing. That's my comment.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, we'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Okay. A couple of observations. So, as already suggested, I think it's a very good move for the boiler, the Loafers Centre. Item, where is it? 10 which is the ticket machine for New Road car park. We're just confirming that there is going to be consultation on that, and that it's not for putting in payment for tickets. It is to try and protect the use of that car park for turnover, so that the local residents can visit the shops, but no charge is intended. It's purely for the number of hours that you can stay there, and it's something that we're going to be doing in other parts of the area.
Absolutely correct. It is
Misuse, basically.
to support those people wanting to use the shops in Netley. And there's a few cars that have been there for more than a few days, should we say.
Yeah, and we discussed the Mercury Hub, the Mercury Library, the chair, and there was some questions about whether that could be held back for further discussions.
Yeah, thank you,
Because
Chair.
we're not sure, because we've only had the one quote, etc.
Yeah, that's right. I think there were some discussions fairly recently on this one, and there was a feeling from members collectively that maybe £300 was quite significant for one chair. And I think the work we do with the guys at the Mercury Library Hub, we'll go back to them and see if we can find a chair that's probably needed, but maybe not as expensive as the one they found originally.
Thank you. So that will come off this recommendation. So we won't be considering at this stage item 8. Correct. Is that clear? The members happy with that? Okay, in that case I'll ask for a proposer and seconder that we approve. Councillor Cross proposed, seconded, Councillor Jarvis, and we are therefore voting to approve all the items bar number 8. Okay, can I have those against and abstentions? No, that's duly carried. Yes, so I understand that we then have to have a vote to reject at this point item 8, so that it can go back for further discussions. So can I have a proposal for that, please? Councillor Cross, seconded. Cllr Holland, all in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. That's clear, yeah? So we now move on to item 7, which is the presentation of planning guidelines. And that's Rebecca.
Thank you. So this is just a summary of how we determine the planning applications and what we have to consider and what we can't consider. All proposals must be considered on planning grounds, and they must be determined in line with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Now for Eastleigh, the development plan is the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan 2016 to 2036, which was adopted in April 2022, and the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, although I don't believe that's relevant to any of the items tonight. In terms of relevant considerations, other considerations include things like the adopted supplementary planning documents, such as our quality places, SPD, parking standards, and planning obligations. Relevant government policy, which includes the National Planning Policy Framework, which was updated last year. And that includes, the main thing that has is the presumption in favour of sustainable development. And some other things that are sort of set out in the NPPF, which is the National Planning Policy Framework, are to deliver sustainable development without delay, meet housing need to boost the supply and delivery of housing, promote growth of the economy, require high standards of design, and prevent and mitigate impacts, including environmental impacts. The presumption in favour of development means to permit development unless there are adverse impacts to outweigh the benefits. And the three themes of sustainability, which are covered generally in our reports, are economic, social and environmental, which should all be considered together. In terms of other things that have been taken into account when we determine planning applications, in many cases there's a planning history, previous applications and sometimes appeal decisions. Site-specific matters such as highway matters, residential amenity, visual amenity, ecology, drainage, tree impacts, and various others which are all detailed in the reports. Consultations and third-party comments, which we take into account, and sometimes, in some cases, there is case law relating to a site. Some of the issues that we cannot take into account when determining an application include moral, racial and religious views, devaluation of property, loss of a private view, breach of a covenant, matters that are covered by other laws and legislation such as building regulations and environmental legislation, personal views about the character of the applicant, and civil matters such as boundary disputes. And in terms of the actual decision making tonight, if a decision is made that is contrary to the recommendation of the planning officer, this must be explained and minuted with clear reasons given, whether that be approval or refusal. There is an option to defer a decision to seek amendments or further information, and a committee must indicate what that is, what the reasons for deferral are. And there is also an option to add further controls such as planning conditions. Thank you.
Shall we then move on to item 8, which is Queen 32A Queen's View, Netley Abbey, and I will ask.
Thank you. Before I start the main presentation, hopefully everyone will have seen the update sheet that was circulated earlier today, and I think there's copies of it here tonight. I'm just going to go through and summarise what those updates are, just so that you're aware. There's an update to the recommendation, which is subject to a number of items, which I'll go through later, but we've added on an item to say subject to any updates to the conditions as a result of further information. There was a further representation received following the publication of the report, which mainly discussed parking concerns and provided photographs of the parking congestion in the area. There has also been an additional vehicle tracking plan provided to address some comments of the Highway Authority to show that vehicles can turn without using Robin Place, and again I'll cover that more in due course. So following that, we've had an updated highway response which confirms no objection, but asks for an additional condition to restrict the size of refuse vehicles on the site. And then there is also, there would also then be an updated, that the plans condition number 2 would be updated to include the vehicle tracking number. And then I also, which isn't in the update sheet, but something I just wanted to point out because I noted a discrepancy in the parking figures, which are outlined on within the report. There's a couple of points where on the hard standing I've said that it can take 12 vehicles. That's actually should be 10 vehicles, although I may have noted that in the sheet. And then in terms of the actual parking requirement for the site, there was an error where in my report I referred to in that the emerging parking standards would require 18 spaces for the development. It's actually 21. That was an error. That was a typo. And just to point out that those figures in the report don't include visitor spaces, and the proposal doesn't propose to include any further visitor spaces. So I'm just going to move on now to the main presentation. The site, the application site lies on the southeast side of Queen's View, which is adjacent to the Netley Recreation Ground, with Robin Place development to the southwest, and on the site itself is a 2-storey building which accommodates a shop and a food bank at ground floor level and 2 flats above with some gardens to the rear. Then there's an area of hard standing in front of the site, and a footpath that goes into the recreation ground from this side. The surrounding area is mainly 2-storey, apart from Robin Place, it's mainly 2-storey housing, fairly spacious layout, set back from roads in a quite green and landscape setting. I provided this image which kind of just shows the existing site here, the existing building here, in context with the surrounding development. As I said, mostly 2-storey housing along Queen's View and Park View here, and then this is the end block in the Robin Place development. The application proposal is for a full redevelopment of the site, which would demolish the existing building and provide a new development of a Part 2, Part 3-storey building accommodating 18 flats with one small retail unit here to replace the shop. It would be 10 two-bedroom flats and 8 one-bedroom flats. There'd be a total of 22 car parking spaces, which would be 20 for the residential flats and 2 for the retail unit, and a servicing bay here for the retail unit for refuse vehicles and deliveries. The scheme also includes a new footway provision around the edge of the site leading into the recreation ground, and new tree planting and landscaping, and the verge here on the Queensview frontage would be retained and new planting provided. There is a large tree at the moment in the garden of the existing property which would be removed, which our tree officer has raised no objection to, and the proposal is to plant a number of new trees to compensate for that loss. Oh, and then just to point out, there's 2 access points, so the main one to the main car park from Queensview, and then a second access point to 6 parking spaces from Castle Road. And this would all require quite extensive sort of reconfiguration of the existing highway layout, which would then need a Section 278 agreement from the Highway Authority. I've got some photographs of the site just to give some more context. These ones are taken from Queensview itself, showing the application building here. The nearest residential property on this side is number 28 Queensview, which has the garden extending back behind the gardens of the application site. And then on the other side there, you've got Robin Place development. And these photographs are then taken from inside the site itself, showing the existing 2-storey building with its attached garages. And then looking down towards the recreation ground here and showing the hard standing area that's in front of the site as existing. This is then turning further round to the south, looking towards Robin Place and the access to Robin Place there. And then this final photograph is taken from the recreation ground, looking into the site with the building, the existing building to the right and Robin Place to the left. And then these photographs are taken from further back. Well, the first one is taken from further back in the recreation ground, looking back towards the site, which is here. You can see some of the other buildings in Robin Place between the trees, fronting the recreation ground, and the new building would front in this area here. This photograph then shows the existing footpath linked to the recreation ground, and then if you go left from that photograph there, you go down to, there's a footpath that links down towards Parkview. And then this is the boundary with the recreation ground, showing some of the existing trees. And the final photograph I've got here to show is taken from Parkview. It's quite difficult to get a view of the site from here because of the vegetation, but this is roughly where I've taken it from, looking across the top corner of the recreation ground towards the application site in this area here. In terms of the actual proposal, as I said, the building would be Part 3-storey, Part 2-storey, dropping down on the southwest side here, and you can see the proposal to use different coloured brickwork and features such as cladding and inset balconies and elements to break up the mass of the building and give it more visual interest, which would be more evident in some of the images I'll show in a bit. But each of the flats would have their own, would either have a balcony or a private garden area, and there's also a communal garden area on one side of the building. These are a couple of street scene images. So the first one taken from looking from Queensview, so number 28 here, Robin Place, and then showing the building in the centre, showing its scale in relation to both of those 2 neighbouring properties. And then the second street scene shows it from the recreation ground. So, as I said, a kind of continuation of the buildings that front onto the recreation ground here, coming along here, and then these are the properties in Parkview. In terms of the floor plans, there's 3 floors of development. On the ground floor, you've got the 67 square metre shop unit, and then 6 flats, and which would all have either a dual frontage or outlook towards the recreation ground. On the first floor, on the first floor there would be a further 7 flats, and on the second floor a further 5 flats, so totaling 18. And you can see here there's some solar panels proposed, although the main bulk of those would be on the main roof of the building. And now I've just provided some 3D images which were included in the design and access statement, because they give a good context to the proposed building, and also helps me talk about the relationship with the neighbours. So this one is quite good at demonstrating the relationship with Robin Place. So the building itself would be more or less to the north of Robin Place, so it wouldn't directly overshadow the windows here. It would of course change the outlook for the flats here, but there's a separation distance between the two buildings and the setback of the 3rd floor, which creates further separation with the landscaping in between. There's also a limited number of windows proposed on this elevation, and any of the ones that face directly across would be obscure glazed, and that would be secured by condition, so that prevents any direct overlooking. So the amenity of the residents of those flats is considered to be protected. On this side, so I have flipped the angle a bit, but so this is Queensview here, and then you've got number 28, which is the nearest property on Queensview. The new building would be set back at least 7 metres from the boundary of this property. It would cause some overshadowing to the garden, but we do have to take account that this garden is quite overshadowed already at the moment by the large tree, and that would come down. And so it's not considered to be a sort of significantly worse situation to what there is at the moment. And it's and the actual relationship between the new building and the house at 28 Queensview is considered to be acceptable in terms of the separation distance and the angle of the windows, because there wouldn't be any direct overlooking to the rear windows of their property. And again, any windows on this side would be obscure glazed, and they're all, I should point out that the windows on the side are all secondary windows, so there's more than one window serving those rooms, so they can be obscure glazed without impacting on outlook for the future residents. And then this one shows the relationship with the nearest property here, which is, I believe, One Park View. Due to the angle of the building and its distance between and the orientation, it's not considered to result in any significant loss of light or outlook impact from these residents. And in terms of privacy, these balconies here would be predominantly set back behind this side elevation wall, which would prevent any direct overlooking in this direction. So the new development has been designed to take account of the amenity of all of those nearest residential properties, and the determination is that the amenity would be protected and would be acceptable. In terms of parking, I wanted to just cover some of the matters relating to parking and servicing which have come up in the application. As I said, the existing hard standing area in front of the site currently can accommodate, it probably does accommodate more than 10 vehicles, but in terms of the actual size of the curbs and the restrictions, officially it can take up to 10 vehicles legally parked there. And it's well known that it is a well-used parking area when there's events going on the recreation ground. However, it's never been a car park for the recreation ground, and it's never been, so it's not formally allocated for that. So it's not reasonable to object to the loss of recreation ground parking, because it's not recreation ground parking. But what we do have to consider is whether the loss of that parking area can be accommodated on the local roads, whether it's going to have a significant impact on the local roads. So what we requested that the applicant's transport consultant do was a parking survey, and they did that on 2 weekday evenings and on a Saturday when a football match was taking place. And the top image here shows the roads that were taken into account in that survey. And what their survey showed was that even during the busiest times, which I believe was at 2:30 on a Saturday during the football match, there was still 48 spaces available in the wider road network. So that's with the updated survey results that I've had through, and that's been updated to remove the double counting of cars parking on both sides of the road. So what we've determined from that is that there is there is sufficient capacity in the surrounding network to take the loss of parking from this site. And the highways officer has raised no objection in terms of general traffic movements and increased trip rates from the development in terms of the local highway network, so there's no objection there. And then finally, in terms of the servicing, there was a concern raised that the refuse vehicles accessing the shop might have to use Robin Place to turn. That was a slight concern because it is a private road. However, they have now demonstrated that it's not necessary to use Robin Place, and provided that the size of the refuse vehicles is restricted, which is the additional condition, that issue is considered resolved. I then wanted to move on to address the ecology matters, because as you'll understand from the recommendation here tonight, is that we are seeking a resolution. The recommendation is to permit but subject to, and the main thing that needs to be done is some additional bat surveys, and this is because during the application process there was evidence provided of bats actually entering the building, so it's now considered to be a confirmed bat roost, and therefore further bat surveys are required to assess the nature of those roosts and what mitigation is required, and they can only be undertaken at certain times of the year, which is from May onwards. So that's why you've got a recommendation for a resolution rather than a full decision tonight, because it would be subject to agreeing that. So obviously there's a lot more detail set out in the report itself, but just to summarise the key considerations through the report, in terms of the principal development, the site is in the urban edge of Netley, where the principle of residential development is acceptable, subject to all relevant policies. It would provide a net gain of 16 dwellings, which contributes positively to the council's housing land supply and provides a more efficient use of that land. In terms of design, the scale, design and layout has to be determined to be acceptable in relation to its context and in relation to the neighbouring residential amenity. Ecology, as I've just explained, there is further work required for ecology, which is why this is a resolution subject to. Access and parking has been determined to be acceptable, including the servicing arrangements, and there's no objection from the Highway Authority. And there's various other matters that have been considered, including drainage, energy efficiency, and mitigation of the impacts on European protected sites, all of which is detailed in the report and are acceptable subject to a number of conditions as set out. So just to reconfirm the recommendation is to delegate back to the Service Director for Planning and Environment in conjunction with the Chair and Vice Chair to grant planning permission with conditions subject to 1, the additional emergent bat surveys and agreement of updated mitigation proposals, 2, the agreement to any amendment to the building design to incorporate bat roost features, 3, a response from Natural England on the appropriate assessment, which relates to impacts on the European protected sites, 4, the payment of developers' contributions as set out in the report, and 5, any necessary amended condition wording as required to take account of new information. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'll now move to members of the public who've indicated they wish to speak. But before I ask members of the public to speak, I've got a statement that Ross is going to read out from one member of the public.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a statement from a resident, Mr. Rick Lee. I cannot see any benefits of this to anyone in the village, especially those of us that live on the perimeter of the site. We live 20 foot away from what will be the hoarding boundary. If the build was to go ahead, it would seriously affect myself and my partner, who has asthma and works nights, so sleeps from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. And I have ME, which means I need 16 hours of sleep a day on bad days, so this build would seriously cause extra stress and harm and would be detrimental to our health and quality of life. The dust and noise pollution will inevitably be a big issue to us. There will be extra traffic to and from the building site, which will be especially problematic during bin collection days and school time drop-offs and collections. There will be extra vibrations and noise from passing HGV construction lorries for skips, deliveries, plant machinery, etc. There will be a constant beeping of on-site vehicles when moving. That beeping is absolutely necessary for the safety of all personnel, both on-site within the boundary of the hoarding and off-site. All this extra noise will be amplified by all the buildings that surround the site like an amphitheatre, and non-stop for the duration of the build, just 20 feet away from my windows. Our vehicle will need constant cleaning from sight to dust. We won't be able to open our house windows without breathing in extra dust and noise from the construction site. Our house will be continuously covered in dust. I know how it's going to be because I've worked in construction for over 30 years. As a builder and construction site manager, I have first-hand experience of all housing development. I know what's coming if approved. Please highlight all these points that I have brought to your attention.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will ask the first member of public to speak, and that is Mark G. Just to remind you that we're using the traffic light system, which obviously is green, and then it turns to amber and then turns to red, hopefully. And we are going to be giving you 3 minutes each, and we'll give you a reminder if you're running near the time. Okay, Mr. G.
Yeah, so I'm not very good at this. I've got PTSD and I've got other elements. I live at the back of Robin's Place, which is an absolute monstrosity, 4 stories high. It's the only thing you... I live at the back of Robin's Place, which is 4 stories high. It's an absolute monstrosity what they got rid of last time. It's the only thing you can see at Southampton Walk when you're going through Red Funnel. It's a great big beacon, and it's absolutely disgusting building, but there you go. It's done now. So I had to write to my MP to find out what was going on with this planning, because it was so vague. There was deception, everything. So the letter came back. It was full of lies, deception, sleight of hand, and basically a load of bullshit. But there you go. So what he said was extensive local community engagement. Okay? Online public consultation, 3 weeks. I don't use online. I can't use a computer very often. It's very hard for me to do. So that's, most people are old, disabled, haven't got any internet knowledge. You know, I'm 53, I never grew up. I'm a master craftsman, who I was, but I've never grew up with computers. I've got no interest in computers or technology. So there we are. So it says a letter drop here. You said you've dropped off 450 letters in the vicinity, so only the immediate vicinity around. Now, I live in one of these facilities. I've asked every road member. Nobody ever received these letters. Nobody. So nobody even know the consultation was put on. There you go. It's not even put on the community board outside the shop. Nothing. Not one notice has ever been put on there. So we've been deceived again. So there we go. In the letter, it says the retention of the shops. Unfortunately, the long-term, low-level demand for the shops. Both shops are full, used, and they're by the community. This is a community area. You're getting rid of a Christian food bank, which look after the vulnerable, the disabled people, and you just rejecting that like it's nobody's business. That's what you're doing. Just let it go. I went in there today, and they were discussing about disabled people, what needs they want, what food they need, everything else. The community, the actual food bank, actually go into the shop and they deliver the papers. So there's a community there which you're going to destroy. It's the only bit we got left in Netley. There is no other community. So that's the response to the MP, that was. You say you had 250 responses, 150 attended the drop-in, 50 written responses. So it went on. So that's 550 people said they don't want this development, but you've ignored that and proceeded with it. So no notification to the football team what use this place. The 2 shops were never notified. The flats above and the 450 houses were never notified in that area. So this is to the MP you've lied, but you told him you've done all this. So there we are. Now the drop-in centre. That was chosen venue, availability, parking, Batlocks Heath. Abbey Hall should have been used locally. Walk to it, bigger, nicer, and was available. But you told the MP it wasn't available. But you went to a different area where nobody can get to, no buses to it. Everybody has to drive. The Abbey Hall is bigger, but you held your consultation period there, out of the way. So,
Just to remind you, you've had your 3 minutes, so if you'd like to.
okay. Well, I've got to carry on, sorry. So, this is all sharp practice, and what you've done is tick box everything. You've said there was a 2-storey development at the side of it. It's actually 3 stories. It's a monstrosity, right? We need the Hound bank, food bank. We need the shop. We need the area left as it is, as a community. People, in the mornings, I go out, I see all the school kids park there. They have to overflow. It's actually an overflow parking area, and they actually park there. In the evening, they pick up as well. And at night time, the commercial vehicles, what can't park on the road, actually use it for parking as well. So I don't know where you get this parking from. I'll leave it there. Bullshit. I'm angry. Leave it alone.
And now invite Richard James to come across.
Coffee first.
Yeah, good evening. Just want to ask if any of you have actually been to the site. You've been, had a good look. Excellent. That's good. The parking, I'm going to go back to the parking because I do think that needs to be readdressed. Hopefully you could redo the parking survey, stress surveys, because I think they're incorrect. You seem to come up with the figures of how many parking spaces are there by drawing blue lines on the map and not actually looking on site. This morning I went round after the new survey was put out last night. I've gone out and had another look, and I can only find 90 to 95 car parking spaces in the area. You say they've dropped from 190 odd down to 134, but I do think they need to go down even more. That totally makes all your figures incorrect. But as we've got the BAT survey happening in May, would it be possible to ask for someone to come and have a re-look at where the parking spaces are down in the area? That's that on that one there. The build site, there's actual parking spaces there. I'm glad you said you made an error in the maths there. But I think there's further as well. I don't know what figures you're using. I'm wondering if you're using 1 bedroom, 1 car parking space, 2 bedroom, 1.5 car parking spaces, and 3 for the shop. 10 2 bedroom, 8 1 bedroom, and 3 for the shop comes to 26. And with the new emerging one you're using as well, that comes to about 18.25 if you use the new one of 0.5 cars and 0.75 cars per building. I can't remember how, I don't know if they're going to be sufficient or not for the area. We'll see. As I say, I'm glad to see the BAT survey is being readdressed. I actually live in the area, but I was never really asked about the BAT survey. They arrived 2 minutes in the loft, and the survey which was done, I think, in September, that was incorrect as well. They put where the dots are, and they said they were back at 32 Queensview, 32A Queensview. They weren't in the garden there, I can tell you that. So glad that that's been done again. I really haven't really got anything else to say other than, have you checked on drainage from the building in the recreation ground, where the drains go from that? That be noted. That's what I really want to say, really.
Thank you very much. And I've got a third speaker, Maureen Queen. Are you representing Hamble?
My family was one of the first to move into the new houses in Queensview in May 1952. So I have seen this plot evolve from waste land next to the rec to Banny's shop in a garden shed his expansion into a second garden shed to the present brick building. There was also a mobile co-op shop that came round once a week. In those early years, it was a fairly poor neighbourhood with few cars or even TVs, and it's still quite a poor neighbourhood. Richard and Lisa have carried on that legacy of providing a service to a needy community. Their customers include children being taken to school or nursery who want sweets or drinks, and residents of Robin Place who are unable to make the journey to the village for supplies due to their decreasing mobility. During the pandemic especially, Richard provided a lifeline to many, doing business through closed doors and scribbled notes. The original plans must have seemed like a kick in the teeth to him, and it's been noted that the food bank is being displaced. Seems quite ironic, really. Many of his other customers are people going to the recreation ground to watch or play football matches and training sessions, dog walkers and families using the play equipment. However, when I attended the consultation event at Butlocks, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. The architect, who I spoke to, who we found out wasn't local and had no idea of local needs, had taken no account of the existing use of the parking area in front of the shop by visitors to the rec, and had only allowed footpath access to it. And I have to state here that this area has identified as a car park for over 60 years, and like people think identifying as female or male, I think car parks could do the same. So, where are they supposed to park? The land that was gifted to the parish in 1897 to commemorate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. There are various covenants on the land that restrict the percentage of built environment on the open space there, so on-site parking is nigh on impossible. We have, as a parish, looked at that. I fully accept that the current footprint does not make best use of the site, but I, along with others, was shocked and disappointed at the massive size and bulk of the proposed replacement building, with very conspicuous residential parking provision taking up most of the frontage. It is gross overdevelopment and is not at all sympathetic to the surrounding character of the area, which, apart from the later development at Robin Place, which was allotments when I was a child, consists of two-storey semi-detached houses and bungalows. PPS 7 and 59BE apply. This whole estate has always benefited from its areas of open space, and we have tried to resist the scourge of greedy developers. We were doubly shocked to learn that it's our own borough council that wants to inflict this monstrosity on our community. You've only got to drive up Grange Road to see how many fields, which we thought were classed as countryside, that have already been plundered to feed the national quota for new housing. The revised plans do now include provision for one shop, for which we are grateful, but the proposed
Maureen,
number
can you
of
just
flats
finish your sentence, please?
is much too high, and the numbers should be reduced to single figures so that the new building is contained within the current curtilage.
Okay, we have one speaker in support, that's Mark Sennett. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Sennett. I'm the agent respecting the application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and also thank you very much to your officers in terms of their assistance in the whole application. You'll be aware there's been two pre-application submissions with respect to the scheme, and also, as Mr. Gee referred to, an extensive public consultation exercise. He's referred to the fact that we had 263 responses to the online consultation exercise, and about 150 people turned up to the public consultation meeting we had, which is, most measures, a very, very strong response from local residents. The issues they picked up during that meeting related in one to the retention of a retail unit. We've taken on board the concerns raised by local residents in this respect, and retail units being shown in the scheme that will provide
It could be any retail unit, can it?
It's a retail unit, and it will provide the continuity of the convenience store on site.
How much money are you making?
I'm telling you again, sir, please do not interrupt.
Oh, this is all bullshit.
The other concerns relate.
Leave the bloody thing alone. You and your time. Fucking alone.
With regard to the food bank, the applicants are looking to relocate the food bank locally, but you may well be aware that the food bank moved into the premises on a temporary basis, knowing that a long-term redevelopment site was proposed, and therefore we're aware of that. The other issue that's been referred to relates to car parking. The standards are nearly met in terms of the current car parking provision. The proposals include the car parking survey that's been referred to and demonstrates that there would be sufficient on-street car parking in respect of any residents' car parking provisions, but also, as you've seen on match days, there are 10 spaces on site that can be used, and there is sufficient space for them to be provided within the highway. The initial concerns relate to noise and nuisance during the construction process. You'll note condition 2 refers to a SEM, which controls various aspects of demolition and construction process. Unfortunately, construction is an inevitable process that can cause nuisance, but can be adequately controlled through such condition. The scheme seeks to provide, make an efficient use of land. There's a need for housing in the borough, and
yeah, they should be coming down.
Sorry about that. Steve.
very unusual.
I'll give you another minute, please.
Great, thank you very much. The scheme seeks to provide 18 units on site, 18 additional flats, 16 additional flats over what we've got at the moment. It's an appropriate location for additional development and for efficient use of land. You'll note that Robin Place is of comparable scale, and there are other schemes that front onto the recreation ground, and in urban design terms to make an improvement to the wider area. The site's sustainably located and makes an efficient use of brownfield site that reduces pressure on less suitable greenfield sites within the borough. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Sorry about the interruptions. Rebecca, would you like to come back on any of those points that were raised?
Yeah, thank you. There's a few things I can come back on, although Mark did just mention some of them. So I think Mr. Lee's main concerns related to, this was a statement that was read out, related to impacts during the construction period. And as Mr. Sennett just pointed out, there is a condition proposed for a construction management plan, which is intended to be a pretty detailed plan that would address and set out how pollution impacts, noise, dust, vibration, etc. is all managed during the construction period, and that would have to then be adhered to throughout the construction period. There is a number of concerns raised about the parking survey. Obviously, I can only go by the results that I've been provided by the applicant's transport consultants. And as I said, they have been updated following concerns raised that there was double counting because of double parking, and that was unfortunately provided rather late, but that's the latest survey and it still shows capacity. So from our point of view, taking account of the information we've got, we consider there to be sufficient capacity on the surrounding roads to accommodate the parking shortfall. And I did clarify at the start of this application that there was an error in where I quoted the parking standards for the proposed scheme for the emerging standards. It would actually be 21 spaces, not 18, plus 3 spaces for the shop, when actually they're proposing 2 for the shop. That was correct. In terms of drainage, that has been subject to quite detailed review by the Hampshire County Council Flood Authority, and they have raised no objection. They did ask for some further information during the course of the application, winter groundwater monitoring, but they've raised no objection to the principle of the strategy proposed, and full details would be requested by condition. I think that was the main points that I've noted down to come back on, and I believe Mr. Sennett did mention about the food bank, that obviously we are keeping a shop on the site, but the food bank sounds like it's proposing to be relocated, but that's outside of the planning process, so it's not something that I'm involved in personally. If there's any other questions, though, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now move to members to debate, and I would just ask the public if you can just listen and allow members to speak and make their decision. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I've just got a question for Rebecca, please. I may have missed this in the report, so apologies if I have. But obviously the shop is very important to residents, and I know during the consultation period, that was expressed, and the shop obviously is now in the new design, as it were. I just wondered, during the actual development, is there going to be any provision for keeping a shop on the site available for residents during that time? Because obviously they're going to miss it if it suddenly disappears before the new one opens. Just wondered if any thought had been given to that.
It's not something we've discussed. I don't believe there would be. I mean, there's bound to be a period where, during the construction, where there can't be a shop because it would be a construction site. It's not something that's been raised with me.
So I just wondered if anybody had thought, I don't know, porter cabin or something, because if residents are depending on it during that time, maybe, provision's important.
Yeah, I guess that there are nearby shops. I know it's not as close to those houses, but you can walk down to the local centre from the site. But yeah, I do appreciate it wouldn't be as close as the shop that's on the site. But it would only be a temporary loss. Yeah.
But a big loss, obviously, for the people affected.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a member of staff who might be able to answer or put a bit more meat on that bone, that question. Harry Lee, are you available to speak?
Yes, like I say, not a planning consideration, and there's a number of conversations being had, and I won't disclose too much to respect people's kind of privacy in the conversations that are being had with current occupants of the building. But we are exploring and looking at where there may be opportunities for temporary provision through the build, if that is a suitable option given the nature of the site. Locality is obviously very important for that sort of thing. The conversation obviously needs to happen with those involved to try and find a suitable solution in terms of the constraints that you are going to have a construction site there if the site does go ahead for a period of 18 months. So there needs to be a suitable solution in terms of location that works in terms of the context of the site, but obviously also for those people that would be running it. So I think that's probably as much as I can say in terms of that we're trying to have that conversation to facilitate that if there is the appetite to do so. But can't confirm any more than that at this stage.
Okay, Thank you. As long as it is being discussed, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Councillor Jarvis, Liz.
Sorry, I was just going to pick up on the issue about the shop, but also I just want to go back to the BAT surveys. Presumably they would start in May, is that right? And how kind of detailed and in-depth would they be to ensure, and what would happen to the bats? That's my concern.
Okay, yeah, so as part of this application, they did carry out an initial bat survey and then one follow-up, what's called an emergent survey. But now that the building is identified as a bat roost, they need to carry out 3 further emergent surveys. So that's quite in-depth. That accords with all the relevant legislation. And then once they've done those surveys and established the nature of the roost, they can then work out what's needed to mitigate it. So if there is a roost there and it's being well used, they would have to provide features within the new building to kind of replicate that roost so that it's not lost. But that's all. That would all have to be agreed once the surveys are done, once they know what's actually happening inside that building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Reference talking about a temporary shop and the comment about said yes, you can go down to the shop. Have you ever been down Victoria Station Road to go to the shop and the cars parking on the footpath and the access? It's not what you call a safe route for mainly elderly. So I would like, if possible, look into a temporary shop, at least on the green area for the residents, because it is an arduous task to go around there, down that area. And I drive down that quite a lot, and I find it quite difficult overtaking the cars, and especially cars parking on the footpath on the opposite direction, so you've only got a single line. So I think there is a problem which we could look into. I know we need accommodation, which you've got there, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedroom flats. But at this point in time, I'm a bit concerned about the loss of the shop, because it's a lot for shop. If you've got your back survey, you've got to wait another 4 months, 4 or 5 months to give the survey. It won't be started until next year, so you've got the elongation. So I'm just concerned about that. I know we need flats and it's ideal. We do need accommodation for the area. And I'm a bit kind of concerned about that aspect, if you can take that comment on. Subject to the survey and that, I think that it all relies on that, and I've seen planning and construction stopped until they actually got a survey, and I'm not too keen on the recommendations subject to the BAT survey. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and in terms of the temporary shop, I think it's a bit difficult for us. We couldn't, because we don't know whether that's possible or not at this stage. We couldn't put kind of like a condition, for example, but we could suggest an informative note on the decision to say, all efforts to be made to provide a temporary provision for a retail unit during the construction period. But because that's kind of outside of the planning process, it can only really be an informative, but we could suggest that. The BAT surveys, in terms of the resolution being subject to, what that would mean is that tonight, if there was whatever decision made tonight, it wouldn't be a full decision, it would be a resolution of a decision subject to the BAT survey, so it would all come back in terms of the information, and the mitigation would come back to be agreed with the committee chair, vice chair and the service director. Yeah.
Sorry, I do believe the temporary shop is not part of the planning issue, but it is it a concern of the residents around there, because you also get residents that go to the shop which are up Hunt Avenue, Salwood Road, etc. So it takes a wide area. And I have been pursued about the shop as well. So.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on the issue of the shop again because what I discovered when I was at the public consultation meeting last year was that a lot of the residents, or there are residents in Robin Place who rely on the service that's provided by Richard and Lisa for to give them their groceries because they're not physically able to get to the co-op. So I think it is really, really important that we ensure that there's something in place for those residents.
As questions, we now need to move on to debate. What I would say, just before we go into debate, we need a proposer and a seconder of one sort or another. But the shop isn't a consideration in making the plan decision, but it is something nonetheless that I'm sure that officers can take back and we can look at in the same way as we're trying to help and support the Hound Bank. We've had conversations with them in the past and we are trying to resolve that situation with them. So this would seem another step in that direction. From what members say, there is real concern that some sort of provision is made, but it's not part of the application, so we need to make that clear. So I now need a member to start the debate.
To get the debate started then, you know my concerns, and you know that I know we need the flats in consideration, and we know that we have got parking problems there, especially on the school runs, because I got stuck behind the car just in the middle of the road, dropping people off for half an hour, going around there. So to start the debate, I put a proposal to go to support the resolution subject to that survey.
Okay, so that's a proposal to accept it subject to the survey. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, happy to second that.
Any other members wish to speak? Okay, I think as Chairman tonight, I'm happy to have this come back to myself and Councillor Craig at the appropriate time. When you actually look at this planning application, I had concerns over overlooking, etc., which is what you'd expect. It is limited. It has been looked at and dealt with, and I'm happy with that now. I walked the footpath down the side, and I just wanted to confirm that those trees that form the line of the footpath at the back of those gardens, or proposed gardens, would actually be retained rather than removed and new screening put in, because they're quite mature.
Do you mean the ones in the recreation ground?
The ones between the recreation ground and the site that runs down into the next road. I walked down the side, the footpath, down the side of the...
Down here?
Yes.
Yeah, there's no proposal to remove the trees outside of the site boundary.
So the screen will remain. That's
Yeah.
what I was concerned about there. Okay. We've got a proposer and a seconder that we accept this scheme with subject to it coming back to Chair and Vice Chair at a later date following the back survey, and we've got a commitment to try and help residents with regards to the shop, etc. Councillor Cross.
Just a quick point. Can you keep, when you're doing the survey, keep the committee informed what's going on with the survey, as in the stages or the final stages? I know you're going to go to the Chair and Vice Chair, it's just so that we're up to date on that.
I think Rebecca will ensure that ward members are made aware, and we'll also let the parish council know too. Okay, can I have a show of hands for voting in favour? Abstentions? One abstention and none against. Okay, that's duly carried. And if you wish to leave, members of the public, you may do so now, or if you wish to stay, you would.
Can I ask a question?
No, but after the meeting you can send it in to Catherine and that will be answered at that time. You can't discuss it now.
Well, it's the legitimacy. This is supposed to be a democracy. The people were invited to consultation. They haven't been listened to. We've come here tonight and you still do the exact opposite
Maureen,
of what the local
you
people
know the
want.
rules.
I do know the rules
So-
and they're there to be broken.
We are now moving. We're now moving on to the next item, which is item 9. Item 9 is Crow Sports, and I believe that is Claire again, is it? This time, Claire Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. The next application is at 20 Crows Court. The application is for a first floor extension with a roof terrace, single-storey side extension and front boundary wall. The site is located at the northern site of Crowsport, which is within the Hamble conservation area. Crowsport's characterised by Art Deco properties, which are white rendered, and they have flat roofs and parapet walls. Originally, all the properties were single-storey, but many have had first-floor extensions with terraces of varying designs, and this forms part of the current character of the Crowsport estate. Next, we move on to the existing dwelling, which is single-storey. At the top of the slide is an artist's impression and photo of the rear of the bungalow as viewed from the access road. On the left-hand side is the neighbouring two-storey dwelling at number 22, which has its roof terrace next to the garden of the application site. At the front, you can see the existing boundary fencing, which is being replaced as part of the application. The bottom left-hand photo shows the front of the dwelling, which is in a tired state of repair. The photo shows the position of the existing vehicle access, which is being relocated as part of the planning application. The middle and the right-hand photos have been taken from the garden of the application site. The middle photo looks back towards the dwelling, and the right-hand photo shows the property's garden looking towards the parapet wall of the neighbour's roof terrace. Now we move on to the planning application, and I've put the proposed and the existing site plans side by side so you can see the works. The main part of the proposal is the first floor extension, which is coloured blue and positioned at the back of the property. Mounted to the roof of the extension are 18 solar panels. In front of the extension is a roof terrace which faces north, providing views over the River Hamble. On the side of the first floor extension there is also a covered balcony. On the ground floor there is a small single-storey extension marked in red. The extension is positioned behind the existing garage and will create a utility room. The works also include moving the existing site access so it will come in front of the garage rather than next to the dwelling at number 18. A new 1.2 metre high boundary wall will be constructed along the site's boundary with the access road. The wall is shown in purple and sits in front of the driveway and existing garage. The wall will increase in height to just over 2 metres for a very short stretch between the back of the dwelling and the start of the hedge. This is the proposed first floor plan. The first floor extension covers just under half of the property's footprint. The extension accommodates a lounge and an office, and there's a small shower room, landing and staircase at the front next to the property at number 18. The lounge has large windows on the northeastern side with access onto the roof terrace. It also has a second set of windows on the southeastern side with access onto the covered balcony. Next to the lounge is an office, and the office has a window on the southwestern elevation, which is marked in red, and this will be obscure glazed by condition to prevent overlooking into the garden of number 19. Likewise, a privacy screen will be attached to the southwestern side of the balcony. Next, we move on to the proposed elevation. The top elevation is from the front of the property next to the driveway. The design is white rendered with parapet walls and simple rectangular windows. The double height window at the front serves a staircase, and there's a roof terrace projecting over the front of the door, and this adds interest to the building. On top of the building you can see the top edge of the solar panels. Underneath is the northeast elevation, which faces onto the access road. The first floor extension sits at the back of the property with large windows leading onto the roof terrace. To the side, you can see the covered balcony, and the canopy is a similar height to the neighbour's parapet wall, which runs along their roof terrace. This means that views from the balcony will predominantly look onto the neighbour's blank wall rather than directly into their property. On the opposite side, you can see the outline of the approved extension at number 18, which is yet to be constructed. The neighbour's first floor extension has no main windows facing the application site, and their approved terrace has a 1.8 metre high privacy screen, so there's no direct overlooking between the two properties. Next, we have the proposed rear elevation of the dwelling, which leads out onto the garden, and the elevation is angled towards the property at number 22. The long row of windows, the first floor windows, are for the lounge, and these lead onto the side balcony, which has been redesigned with simple supporting poles to give the structure a lightweight feel. The red line shows the position of the privacy screen. The bottom elevation is the far side of the property facing number 19. The window outlined in red is the study window, and it will also be obscure glazed. Next, we have a couple of 3D images which compare the existing property to the proposal. On this side, the image is taken from the front driveway and shows the design of the proposal. There's a high parapet wall which is added to the garage. The roof of the terrace projects over the front door, and the first floor extension is stepped back towards the rear of the property, and this again adds interest to the design. This is the longer elevation showing how the property is currently viewed and how it will be viewed from the access road. The first floor extension sits at the back of the property with the terrace in front, and from this aspect you can see the covered balcony to the side, and you can also make out the new boundary wall at the front of the property. So next we turn on to key planning considerations. The first consideration is that the site is within the urban edge, and we always start from the principle that development is acceptable. The scale, design and massing of the proposal meets the Crow's Pool guidance. The roof forms are flat with parapets, the walls are white rendered, the windows are of simple rectangular design, and the first floor extension does not exceed 50% of the area of the ground floor. It's roughly 43%. The proposal fits in with other similar first floor extensions constructed on nearby properties and is considered to preserve and enhance the existing character of the Hamble conservation area. The development is not considered to have an unacceptable impact upon the amenity of neighbouring dwellings. It also provides sufficient on-site car parking, and the relocation of the access is considered acceptable. The development should not impact upon the protected species or their habitats, and it would not adversely affect a designated nature conservation site, and therefore the recommendation is to permit with conditions as set out in the report. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have two members of the public to speak. First of all, Mark Sennett, speaking on behalf of Neighbour, I believe.
Thank you. I've clearly got two hats on tonight in terms of the presentations too. I act for the owner of number 22 Crow's Pool, which on the plan you've got on the screen in front of you is the building to the south of the plot, and that's a fairly good image of it in many respects. You can see that the application site's actually, or the building proposal's canted towards the road and towards my client's property. The element you can see there is a single-storey outshot, which is a roof terrace. Just beyond that is the main habitable room of the development. Because of the views nature of the building, I think they have quite a few first-floor habitable rooms. There are two habitable windows that look north towards the site, and you'll notice from the southeast elevation that you looked at earlier on, there's quite a few windows on the first floor of the development with a canted view of my client's property, and looking towards two windows that we've actually got there. The distance between properties is 9 metres, that's the terrace, and the distance between the windows proposed at the application site and to my client's site property are actually 14 metres. You'll recall from your quality space SPD that I think you should have a minimum of 22 metres between properties, and so the concern that we've got obviously is it going to be an overlooking issue, lots of privacy, the two windows on the site there, and that is the specific concern of the applicant. It's noted by the agent that there's a parapet wall forming the terrace to the terrace, but notwithstanding that, there's still a very real concern that there's a loss of overlooking, loss of privacy to the to development as a result of the windows, and also a little terrace where I think it says covered balcony, and it's like a terrace. That to me, the office and certainly the hubs room can actually open up there and go to terrace there. So it's one of those issues where we believe there's a significant loss of amenity, and we'd like to proceed the application refused on that basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I have Amy Copeland, who's the architect? In favour.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, panel. I'm Adi from Cllr Architects, speaking on behalf of this application, so thank you. Just to briefly summarise, this household is planning application for number 20 Crowsport Estate, Hamble, Rice, is for the erection of a new first floor extension served by roof terraces combined with a ground floor side extension and internal alterations remodelling the entire property to become a 3 to 4 bedroom house. Collectively, all the alterations are designed to comply with the Eastleigh Borough Council planning policy and the Crowsport Estate supplementary planning guidance. The main principles adopted in the design of this proposal was to... So the main principles adopted in the design of this proposal was to remodel the existing bungalow in accordance with its Art Deco style character through incorporation of simple door and window openings while maintaining the use of white render, whilst its cubist features were enhanced through the use of parapet walls finished with coping. In terms of works, the majority of the alterations are focused on provision of new first floor accommodation served by roof terraces, combined with a small ground floor extension incorporating a new side utility room and reconfigured kitchen. Additionally, the proposal also seeks to increase the garage ceiling height by raising the roof and parapet walls. With regards to the property's overall layout and proposed window configuration, impacts such as overlooking or creating a neighbourly relationship with any surrounding properties have been avoided, as all first floor windows are focused towards the east and north, either across the main garden towards the River Hamble or across the Crowsport Estate. And with regards to the comments that Mark Sennick was just making, I'd like to highlight that the property adjacent to number 20 is actually at a high elevated level relative to our property. So the new first floor windows that we're proposing are halfway between the ground floor and the first floor, so they won't even be able to look up and see their roof terrace anyway. In terms of the proposal as a whole, all changes have been designed to relate with the existing context, scale, mass, form and character of the estate, seeking to respect and incorporate general outlooks afforded to other extended properties. In particular, the proposal has, number one, evolved through an assessment of key design principles incorporated into existing dwellings found within the Crowsport Estate. The proposal has, number two, the proposal has been designed to comply with the 50% ratio principle for first floor to ground floor areas as per the Crowsport Estate supplementary planning guidance. Number three, the proposal has been designed to incorporate an altered front approach and reconfigured vehicle access, offering up to 3 off-road car parking spaces. And then number four, finally, during the planning process, alterations were introduced to parts of the first floor and the canopy design as per feedback from the Conservation Officer. And more recently, the applicant has also accepted incorporation of an extra section of obscure glazed visibility screening attached to the side of the eastern roof terrace, further limiting views towards the adjacent properties. Okay. In conclusion, this household's application has been designed to take account of the immediate context and surrounding constraints, whilst through its mass material finish has been designed to enhance the existing bungalows with the remainder of the Crowsport Estate, thus resulting with a remodelled dwelling designed to meet the needs of the current owners. And I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just to say, as members, we're used to full council to the traffic light system, and it still catches us out. We don't realise how short a time 3 minutes is, but give a little bit of allowance there. Councillor Jarvis. Oh, before we do, can I ask Claire if she'd like to come back on any of those points? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. There was just one point I wanted to come back on, and that was the distances between the side balcony and the side of number 22. It is angled on, so at the nearest point it's about 10 metres, but at the widest point it is 18 metres. Also, it faces onto the terrace, so actually the first floor of the neighbour is set 5 metres further back. So the distances between windows at the closest point is 19 metres, and at the widest point is 23 metres. And the other point, which I picked up in the presentation, is, if I just turn to this one, oh, there we go. That one, is just the levels difference, which does slope down to the application site. So you can see the dotted line here. So the windows are actually level with the terrace parapet wall. So any overlooking is going to be at quite an obscure angle looking upwards. So officers don't feel that there'll be an unacceptable impact on the neighbouring property. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Apologies for that. I'm still getting used to this. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check, have there been any objections to this? And also, what was the Hamble Parish Council's response?
There was one objection from the neighbours at number 22. The neighbours at 19 asked for obscure glazing on the study window at the back and the privacy screen, so there was no overlooking into their property. Hamble Parish Council didn't object to the scheme, and they also asked for the obscure glazing and the privacy screen, which the agent has agreed to put onto the scheme.
And what was the basis for the objection?
The objection from number 22, as the agent just summarised, was the distance between them and overlooking into their property, which I covered as part of the presentation. Yeah.
Okay. Happy, Liz? Any other questions? Councillor Cross?
Well, it's not a question really, it's just a kind of statement that the houses round number 22? Number 20 is that you've got 3 developments. So one alongside number 22 was built up a couple of years ago. I think it was pulled down and put back up together again. And opposite the other side there's 2 houses being built, which is similar with the second story, and also one on the left-hand side coming down the hill has been given permission by the old oak tree, which is similar to this proposal. And the parish council seems to be quite happy with the screening, so I would propose. Yes, yeah.
Proposal to accept. Do I have a second for that? With no further questions? Councillor O'Sullivan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, when I was having a walk around Crowsport, I noticed that number 20 is sort of at the bottom of the hill, isn't it? So I could see why it wouldn't be overshadowing any of the other properties or overlooking them. Obviously, there is a concern about number 22, but you just addressed that, Claire. And there are some very large properties that have been extended to 2 floors around there. So I don't see how, if we wanted to refuse it, I don't see how we could on planning grounds. And I think looking at the property as it stands now, I think it would actually enhance it, the plans that they've got. So I'd be more than happy to second that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments? Okay, I would just like to say I'm familiar with this site, I'm familiar with the estate. It is very different to a lot of the developments that we have in the area. A lot of those houses have been enlarged and have second stories now. Originally they were all single story, so there is a sort of a progression of the sort of look of the estate and the design of the estate. This is quite a large plot, being a corner plot, and I think because the overlooking issues have been clarified by Claire, I don't actually have any reservations about this. I think that it's of similar ilk to what's already there. People looking to upgrade their homes, but keep to the traditional block look and design. I think that's essential here. And we have in the past had applications that have tried to change that, and we've said no, it's got to be flat roofs, it's got to be that large window, white walls, etc., to keep the look of the estate as it is, but suitable for the 21st century. I think that's the message that comes across. So I will ask members to vote on that. All in favour? Thank you. No abstentions and no against. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item 10, and I would ask, if I could find it, who's presented this one? Claire. Oh, different Claire. Claire Campbell Best, up at the end there. Thank you, Claire. Two. Are we okay? A couple of minutes because we've lost one of our councillors for a comfort break, I suspect. So if you just bear with us, and then we'll continue the meeting when he returns. Okay, we'll continue then. So item 10, and we have Claire Campbell Best to present the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Agenda item 10 is to consider a householder application for Guillemont House in 9 Mariners Close in Hamble. The proposal is for a 2-storey rear extension, part 2-storey, part first floor side extension, which would include a new first floor rear terrace and alterations to the existing fenestration. So just before the presentation begins, there are a few updates before the presentation begins. There is an additional construction management pre-commencement condition to ensure amenity and highway pedestrian safety is protected, and this has been agreed by the applicant and the agent. And there is also a correctional update to the officer's report. So moving on to the presentation. 9 Mariners Close is located in a cul-de-sac accessed from St Agatha's Road. The site is on the southern side of the road, and there is a public footpath to the west of the site which leads to open space near the River Hamble. The area is characterised by detached 2-storey dwellings, similar in style and design. So here's the proposed site layout, which shows the location of the proposals within the site. The first floor 2-storey side extension would be located here, over and in front of the existing garage. The rear terrace would be behind the first floor rear extension here, and it would face south towards the river. And the 2-storey rear extension here would replace an existing first floor conservatory, rear terrace, and a ground floor rear extension. So here are the existing elevations showing the rear conservatory, existing extension and terrace here that have been added over time. And here are the existing floor plans. So at the moment, the kitchen and living areas are on the ground floor and the bedrooms are on the first floor. So shown on the screen are the proposed elevations, which have been amended from the original submission. So the amendments are a reduction in width to the side extension here and a change in roof form to ensure space remains between the site and the neighbour here to the east. The front elevation to the side extension would now have materials that match the existing frontage here. And in terms of design and layout, the side extension is set back and set down from the main ridge and appears as a subservient addition. Overall, the proposal would increase the footprint of the dwelling by 26%. And here are the original elevations that were initially submitted just for reference. And you can see here the side extension initially projected right up to the garage here, and it had a pitched roof. So here are the proposed floor plans. The proposal is looking to achieve an upside-down house. So the living room, dining room and kitchen would be on the first floor to the rear of the property, overlooking the river, and 2 of the 4 bedrooms would be relocated to the ground floor. The site also has planning history. So in 2004, planning permission was granted for a 2-storey side extension, as shown in the top photo. And this was also extended in 2009, but the works were never implemented. And the plans here, which are under consideration this evening, show the comparable built form between the 2 schemes, with the previously approved plans set a little more forwards towards the front of the dwelling. So with regards to the proposal and its impact upon the street scene, so the top 2 photos were taken from the top of Mariners Close, with the application site on the right here, and the bottom photo shows number 9 on the right and the closest number, number 8 to the left. So objections have been raised by neighbours that the side extension would cause a loss of public view, but unfortunately loss of views cannot be considered as it's not a planning consideration. So what has been considered is the space between the site and the neighbouring property, and it's been concluded that the amended plans have demonstrated that there is now an appropriate amount of space between these dwellings, and the general pattern of development is not disrupted or overbearing with regards to this neighbour here. So as such, it's concluded that this element would not be overly prominent within the street scene. It's also noted that there are sizable detached houses within the close, with a regular spacing as demonstrated here. And there is an example of a 2-storey side extension at number 6 here, which also kind of blocks views of the river. So the bottom picture shows the top of Mariners Close up here, which also again shows large houses and a house of similar design to tonight's proposal here. Therefore, in the context of the street, the proposed development is in keeping in terms of design, mass and scale. So here are the views from the property from the rear. So the 2-storey rear extension, this is the site here, would replace the existing structures that you can see here. They would be the same depth, but the roof line would be maintained with the original house. So it was noted on the site visit that the conservatory in particular is tired and it is in need of repair, and it's also slightly discordant with the main house, so therefore it's considered the rear extension would be more cohesive with the property and rejuvenate and add interest to the rear elevation. So concerns have also been raised that the neighbour at number 8 would also be impacted upon. So the first floor extension would project closer to this neighbour, but there would be a 4-metre separation distance between dwellings, as shown in photo 1. Number 8 also has side-facing windows that face number 9, as shown in photos 2. So the first floor windows serve a hallway and a bathroom, which are non-habitable rooms, and the ground floor here have windows that serve a ground floor WC and a kitchen. The kitchen also has a south-facing door and window, which is kind of shown here in photo 3, and combined they are considered the main source of light for that room, and this west window is secondary. The west window also receives a limited amount of outlook and light, as shown in photo 4, and the side extension is not expected to come any further at ground floor level, and therefore it's not expected to further harm the outlook and light received by this window. There are also concerns that the new rear terrace would cause significant overlooking to this neighbour. However, rear balconies are common in the locality, and as you can see in the pictures 3, 5 and 6, they're fairly close together. And the new terrace proposes an obscure screen facing number 8. So whilst it would move closer, it would provide better privacy measures, which, when you compare to the current situation, as shown in photos 5 and 6, do not cause any more harm. Number 10 have also raised concerns the rear extension would affect their outlook from their bedroom windows, as shown in photos 2 and 3. So as noted, it is acknowledged there would be additional bulk at roof level. However, it's considered due to the separation distance of about 15 metres, the outlook for this neighbour would not be significantly impacted upon in planning terms. The neighbours at numbers 1, 2 and 11 have also raised loss of outlook concerns. However, this photo here shows that the properties are adequately distanced away and would not impact upon their outlook to a harmful degree. It's more loss of a view. So in summary, the following has been considered and deemed acceptable as detailed in the report. So in terms of design, the design, form, layout and scale of the proposal is appropriate. The space would remain between numbers 8 and 9, and the proposal would not form a prominent feature within the street scene. There would be no unacceptable impact upon the amenity of neighbouring residents. There would be no unacceptable impact upon wildlife species, and the proposal would not have a negative impact on the nearby trees. The parking provision is acceptable. The site plan demonstrates that the required parking can be contained within the site, and this will be protected by condition. Therefore, the recommendation is to permit subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, we have 3 members wishing to speak against, so we will start with Julie Clements.
Hello, good evening everybody. I've sent an email to the councillors and the planning officer regarding my objections, but I appreciate everyone's very busy, so probably not had a chance to fully review them. So I'm just going to summarise my main points. So the planning officer's report does not fully consider the width of the 2-storey side extension and the resulting impact. So 3 points require serious consideration. The first one is it's an overdevelopment of the site. The second one is the loss of public view, and my understanding is public view is something which is a planning consideration, and the site planning history. So the proposed 2-storey side extensions actually increasing the width of the house at the first floor level by 60%. with a corresponding height increase of 3 metres. This would be overbearing and excessive for the size of plot and the surrounding area. Due to the close proximity to the neighbouring house, the development would resemble one continuous block of housing, which would seriously impact the existing open aspect of the area. It would significantly close the separation distance between 8 and 9, resulting in a very cramped appearance and greatly impacting the public view of the river and a nature reserve. Quality Places SPD states attractive views at main access to a site should be maximised and unattractive elements minimised. So this proposed extension is contrary to that guidance. There is an approved expired planning application for a 2-storey side extension at this site. This application was for a smaller development. The increase in house width at that time was only 38%, and it did not include building over the garage. Therefore, it maintained the spacing between that property and the adjacent one, maintaining the view. There are 3 properties with 2-storey side extensions in Mariners Close. The maximum width of those is 2.75 metres. This one is 4 metres, so it is significantly wider, and that aligns with the expired approved planning application for this particular property. So that 2.75 metres maximum currently is what the expired planning application was for. So within Mariners Close also, no 2-storey side extensions have been permitted which are in close proximity to the adjacent dwelling where an adjoining property has windows facing the side of this extension. So in summary, this proposed 2-storey side extension, and it's really the side extension that we're objecting to, is significantly wider than any other permitted development in Mariners Close. So it will result in an overdevelopment of the site, adversely impacting the appearance of the street scene. It will have a detrimental, harmful effect on the public outlook and cause a loss of privacy and light for the neighbouring property. There is a large concern if this development is approved, it will set precedents for overdevelopment of Mariners Close, resulting in no gaps between housing and the street view being one continuous block of housing. I'll wind up, I've got one sentence. So this is the first time that a planning application has caused such a strong feeling within the neighbourhood and has resulted in a large number of objections, and the Hamble Parish Council have also objected to it as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Moving on to the second speaker, there is Roy Barker.
Hello, my name's Roy Baker. I live in number 11 Mariners Close. The whole of development of Mercury area has been designed with spaces between the houses to give a spacious look to the estate. This allows the public to see past the houses to various views. Open space, woodland, and some of them across the river. You can see from the pictures that you have been supplied that the side extension almost completely blocks the public views across the river from St Agatha's Road. This view to visitors and walkers gives a first impression of the area. Thank you.
And Michael Phelps.
Hello there. I live at number 10 Mariners Close. Much of what I plan to say has already been said, but in my opinion, my big worry is it will set a precedent. If this house is extended by the extent that they are going to do it, it will lead to further extensions on adjacent houses. If the house at number 8 was extended in a similar way, the gap that is said to be there between these two houses would disappear. So that gap and views, public views, whatever, will completely disappear. We talked this up with the parish council and the precedent being set, and they agreed at the time and they objected as well. So other than that, not much else. The only one thing I do have to say to the planning lady, it says that the rear extension is going to be in line with the first floor in the conservatory, but the roof line on the plan seems to go beyond that. So is that correct, or is it going to be the roof line wrong on the plans?
We'll pick that up.
Yep. Okay, all right, that's it really, thanks.
Okay, we have one speaker in support, and that is Chris Terrell.
Good evening. I'm Chris, the owner of number 9, and I'd just like to give some background information about the property in support of this proposal. Prior to myself and my wife purchasing number 9 last summer, it had fallen into disrepair as the daughters who were inheriting it from their father were not local and did not maintain the building. It was left empty for many months, which caused a burst pipe in the loft that flooded the house and was not discovered for 4 days, so real disrepair. The existing rear extension is not of a high quality construction, as has been mentioned, the very tired conservatory. It has minimal insulation and a leaking roof. The proposed rear extension will be on the same footprint as the existing extension, with the balcony just being relocated rather than a brand new balcony. In addition, the porch to the front of the property is not fit for purpose, no insulation. So the house is really, under standard for the property. It needs investment. It needs to be repaired correctly and to be done properly. So in regards to the previously approved plan, which only expired in 2010, incorporating a 2-storey extension to the side, we are not looking for the extension to go all the way to the front of the house, which I think would make it look a very large property and would widen it by such an extent. Hence, we have only wanted to extend halfway along the drive to maximise maintaining the driveway, and so it's a smaller extension to what was approved back previously in 2010 and before. We just want to make it into a modern 4-bedroom family home. It's not a glamorous extension, it's just repairing what has been badly done, and we feel we have communicated with tried to communicate with neighbours, but have not really wanted to get involved in it. Number 9, where are we? So number 8, the owner, the closest neighbour, number 8, has always been included in the design from the offset. He's been in constant communication, and I have ensured that he has been comfortable with the alterations, which he has been, as in to maintain that it's a detached property, and the reduction of the extension he has always been satisfied with. And just to finish, many houses in Mariners and adjoining closes, such as Fry, Kingfisher and Mercury, have had 2-storey and balcony extensions approved. There are many around. In Mariners alone, this includes number 10, 2-storey and a balcony, number 7, number 6 with a 2-storey extension and balcony. Number 5 has had a single-storey rear extension approved. Number 4 has had a large 2-storey extension approved also. So, to finish, having lived on Satchel Lane 17 years, we wish to continue living and investing in the village, despite the uncertainty of the future of the airfield and its impact on the area. And I hope you'll be able to support in the property to be developed to be a sufficient and acceptable home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for speaking. You've been very eloquent with your words, very clear, so thank you very much for that. Claire, would you like to come back?
Thank you to all the speakers. It is noted that we have taken into consideration all the objections. They've been taken into account and considered. So in terms of overdevelopment, when considering the context of the street and the scale of the other properties within the close, it has been concluded that development is of appropriate scale and not overbearing towards the neighbour at number 8. As I said before, detailed in the report and the presentation, I'll just go back to the photos. Yes, it is wider, but it is set back when you compare it to the original approved plan. It is slightly different in built form, but with the amount of space that's left, that it's considered that it's acceptable. There's still some public view. Like I say, loss of view is not a planning consideration, so in terms of the space that's left, it's acceptable. So I don't really have any more things to add because I've detailed it in the report and the presentation.
Did you pick up on Mr. Baker's comments? Was it Mr.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Bell,
Yeah, so I'll go back to that. So this is the existing plans at the moment at the rear. So it does extend at the same depth, but obviously there is a slight overhang there of the roof, but obviously it's considered quite minimal. But like I say, floor plan wise, it is at the same depth as the existing.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, open to members. Questions first? Councillor Cross.
Is this the storage materials? Will it be on the curtilage of the land and not on the footpath, the grassed area by the fence? Because there's quite a bit of building work there, so I wouldn't want the materials and construction to damage the grass and the footpath on the fence side.
So that would be protected by the construction management plan. Also, there are significant trees near there, and trees have also requested that there's a tree protection plan in place in that area where no building materials are stored to not impact upon the root protection. So it would be monitored at that stage, and it wouldn't have any building materials on that section that you're talking about. They'd be in condition and adhered to, yep.
Can we go back to the overhanging of the roof? Why is that necessary?
I think it's just a design feature. I have measured it. I think it's just below 0.5 metre. I think it's just a design feature of the property.
And in terms of the overlooking, I am concerned about the impact on the resident at number 8. They're going to be overlooked.
Yep, so there are concerns that the rear balcony would overlook, but this picture here was taken from the application site, and this picture here was taken from number 6. You can already see there's a lot of element of overlooking already. And whilst this would move closer, there would be a 1.8 obscure privacy screen, so actually that would prevent any overlooking, and that would also be controlled by condition as well.
Any other questions? Councillor? No? Okay. In that case, could I ask for members who wish to start the debate? Can you put your hand up? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. I think the rear extension is certainly going to be an improvement. I think the porch as well, obviously having had a look at it, obviously needs replacing. I think the side extension is, as residents have said, a cause for concern, and I can totally see their point that you would get, or it could appear to be, a continuous block of housing. But I think the fact that it's going to be set back will, I think it will help to mitigate that, trying to visualise it more. It has quite a, I thought, an enclosed feel, the cul-de-sac, when I visited. And I think it's very important to maintain the gaps between the houses, partly because of that. Yeah, so just sort of thinking aloud at the moment, I think. Okay, I will propose that we accept the recommendation.
Do I have a second? Cllr Cross, do you wish to speak now?
Well, when you go into the close, yes, you swing round and it's quite open, but when you turn left, it's quite enclosed. So the view you've got is that gap there, the moorings there. So reference the view, as we said, is not a planning consideration, but there will be a view, but it's a continuation of the enclosed area down further on down the close. So that's my point of view. So the view is not a planning issue. So I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Yes, Councillor Jarvis.
yeah, while the view isn't a planning consideration, I completely get where the residents are coming from and why they're concerned. I'm also concerned about the gap between the houses, and that is I can't support this application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oops.
I will say a few words on this application. I've actually been down to the site twice in the last 2 days. Just yesterday to observe it and walk around the 2 estates, because you've got the Mercury estate next door, similar sort of housing. And today, after receiving a letter by email, that I wanted to go down and confirm a couple of things that were in that. So I know it, I've been down there before, but I know it quite well now. And the first thing that you get an impression of when you go down to those 2 estates is of bungalows, yes, but also large houses. And a lot of those houses have been enlarged, and a number of them facing the river, as you would naturally want to do, have balconies. The previous application for this site was a lot more stark it was right up against the garage of number 8, and it was a lot more imposing in that regard. The new application puts a slant on the roof, which mitigates that to a certain degree. We've heard that the public view isn't an argument under planning law, but you want to protect that area. And not really, when I looked at this site, you've got a front garden which is going to have to contain 3 cars, and it's got a drop curb already. And it's a case of taking away the grassed area and putting in extended driveway. The garage isn't suitable for vehicular use. It was mentioned in the report. And I understand there's 2 lifting doors on the garage, so access, I'm sure, could be used through there to gain access to the construction materials, etc., for the site. I was concerned, however, because I don't think this would stand up at appeal if we objected. And the reason I don't think it would stand up at appeal is simply because of the properties that have already been extended and the types of extension that have been approved in previous times. In Mariner, forget the rest of the estate and the estate next door. In Mariner's Close alone, I observed one property, number 4, which must have some sort of river view, although there's a few trees in the back garden, which has got a 2-storey extension, and the roof line is continuous with the main building. So that is what I would describe as quite an austere look to that development. It's flat, and I don't want to insult anybody, I'm sorry if I do, but the design of it is quite box, quite stark. Number 6 must have at some point had more view to the public in the corner, but that's now got a 2-storey extension, but it's got a pitched roof to mitigate some of the viewing impact for residents and the public. So I don't think we would be able to use that as an argument at appeal. I think we'd lose. And I'm not a councillor who normally objects to something when I think our officers have got no chance of defending it. Under planning law, total sympathy with residents for wanting to keep their area as it is. But our job is to actually look at the planning law and how that fits in with the application that we're looking at. But as I said earlier, my real concern about this was the footpath and the grassland around that site. It's owned by the parish council, as Malcolm has said, and it is absolutely vital that that land is not used for access to during development. It's absolutely crucial, if it's approved, that that land is kept clear for residents and for walkers, and that any damage to it, all the land, the open land owned by the parish, is reinstated afterwards, after development. I also have a little bit of concern that there's a stream that runs along the back that goes out into the river, and we need reassurance from officers that the protection of that stream from any material or whatever is protected. It's really important that we do that. It's not a case of just approving a planning application. You've got to look at where it sits. So, as I've said, I really don't think we've got a chance at appeal if we refuse this. The overlooking, I think, has been mitigated or doesn't fit with criteria set down in planning law. But I do have sympathy with local residents. They want to keep the estate or keep their road as prim as they can. But I also don't want to waste council money and taxpayers' money on trying to fight an appeal that we might end up having to pay costs on. And I think we would on this. I don't see any grounds for the officers being able to fight with any confidence and appeal. Malcolm's just indicated to speak, and then we will go to a vote.
That stream and the estuary, where the water goes into the Saltland, is protected by Randstad and SSI European Convention, so that must be covered to make sure that it is monitored.
Claire, did you want to come back?
Yeah, there are also some ecological conditions, including a construction environmental management plan, so that would cover that.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a proposal and a seconder to approve with the wording that has been agreed. All in favour? I'll vote as well. I'll make that 4. And abstentions and against. Thank you very much. Okay, that's approved. Thank you for that. We have one more. Just all residents, if they wish to. The next item is 13 Satchel Lane. This Claire, yeah. Okay, just give it a couple of seconds to let people start. Okay, thank you, Claire.
Thank you again. Agenda item 11 is to consider a householder application for 13 Satchel Lane in Hamble. The proposal is for a 2-storey front extension, a single-storey front extension with a balcony in the roof space, two and single-storey rear extensions, elevational alterations and enlargement to the front parking area. Again, there's also an update before the presentation begins, and again, this is an additional construction management pre-commencement condition to ensure amenity and highway pedestrian safety is protected, and this has been agreed by the applicant and the agent. So moving on to the presentation, 13 Satchel Lane is located between the Crowsport Estate to the north and Hamble Village to the south. Both areas are in the Hamble Conservation Area, and this area of Satchel Lane is sandwiched in between. The area is mostly characterised with dwellings of traditional form, and there are some contemporary dwellings further along the road. So shown on the screen is the proposed site plan and the location of the extensions. At the front of the property there would be a 2-storey front extension, which is essentially the widening of the double bay window. A single-storey front extension here with a balcony in the roof space. To the side there is a single-storey extension, and then to the rear there would be 2 and single-storey extensions, and the parking area would also be enlarged. So here are the existing elevations which show a number of rear extensions at single-storey level and show that the building's quite traditional in form. Here are the existing floor plans which show a traditional house with the lounge, kitchen and conservatory on the ground floor and the bedrooms on the first floor. So here are the proposed plans that show the extensions in place. So the top elevations are the amended plans that are being considered this evening, and the proposal also includes a change in external finishes resulting in a contemporary appearance. The bottom set of elevations show the proposal at original submission. So the amended plans up here have significantly reduced the scale, bulk and mass at roof level to the proposal. The single-storey extension to the rear has also been lowered in height to 3 metres. It is acknowledged that the rear extensions are sizable. However, it has been noted that the single-storey element could be constructed via the prior notification route, and front balconies are also seen within the locality at numbers 3 and 9 Satchel Lane, so this element would also be in keeping with the surrounding area. The Built Heritage Officer has no objection to the amended plans and has concluded that the proposal would not impact upon the Hamble Conservation Area. So here are the proposed floor plans. So the proposal is looking to achieve a partial upside-down house with the living room and front balcony on the first floor, overlooking the river to the east, and one bedroom located to the ground floor. Also on the ground floor there would be a large open-plan kitchen, dining, family area with doors leading out into the rear garden. So the site does have recent planning history. So in 2022, the council refused a previous scheme as shown. The scheme looked to completely change the property to an Art Deco style house to reflect the nearby Crowsport estate and also add an additional third storey. So this decision was appealed and dismissed by the Planning Inspectorate. However, the decision relates to the scale and character of the scheme, but the Planning Inspectorate concluded there was no impact on residential amenity. Therefore, the appeal decision and its conclusion on residential amenity is a material consideration, as the rear extensions in this scheme are of comparable depths. So here are some pictures of the site within the street scene. So the vast majority of the proposals would be sited at the rear and screened by the adjoining neighbours. The external finishes would be in keeping with the contemporary dwellings seen within the section of Hamble Lane. And as I said, the Built Heritage Officer has no objection as it would not impact upon the heritage assets nearby. So moving on to residential amenity and focusing on the different elements of the proposal. So with regards to the rear elevation, a planning balance has been applied and the previous appeal decision has been taken into account. So the single-storey extension would be mostly screened by the boundary treatment and would not adversely impact upon the neighbouring properties. It is noted that the extension would be close to the boundary here shared with number 11. However, when combining all the factors, so the single-storey nature, the reduced height, the boundary treatment and the appeal decision, it has been concluded this extension is acceptable and would not adversely impact upon this neighbour. It is also acknowledged that the two-storey extension would affect the outlook and light to numbers 11 and 15 either side. But not to a detrimental degree that would warrant refusal, and this was also concluded by the Planning Inspectorate in the previous appeal. The single-storey side element, which would be kind of located here, this is the rear of the property, is modest and subservient. The roof would slope away from number 15 here, and this neighbour doesn't have any side-facing windows, so there would be no impact with regards to any overlooking with this regard to the element of the proposal. So number 11 has raised concerns about the front balcony being in close proximity to their bedroom window, which is shown in photo 3, which was taken from the bay window of the application site. So an obscured privacy screen would be erected to ease privacy and overlooking concerns, and a condition has been applied to ensure this is installed throughout the lifetime of the balcony. There have also been concerns about potential noise by the occupiers and the impact on number 11. So again, on balance, it has been assessed and the balcony proposed is of a modest size and would not allow a large amount of people to use a space at the same time. So it's also been noted that this section of Satchel Lane is a busy residential area with pedestrians walking from the village to the marina and vice versa. So there's already an element of increased noise. Additionally, the same amount of noise could be produced if the occupants of number 13 were to sit at the front of the house and look at views of the river. Therefore, it's considered the front balcony as acceptable in planning terms. So moving on to parking and access, as noted, the greenery and shrubbery would be removed and replaced with an enlarged parking area. The hard standing would be of a permeable material, and there would be a drain running along the front of the site, as well as planting for the additional soakaways. So whilst it's acknowledged there is a loss of green space, the installation of the driveway could be carried out under permitted development. Therefore, to ensure some green frontage remains, a landscaping plan has been applied via condition and agreed by the applicant. So with regards to ecology, as the proposal involves a significant amount of work to the property and site, ecological pre-commencement conditions have been agreed by the applicant prior to any development, and that includes a construction environmental management plan, a landscaping plan and a biodiversity mitigation and enhancement plan. And there are also ecological formatives that have been recommended to the applicant. So in summary, the following has been considered and deemed acceptable. So in regards to design on balance and taking into account the material considerations, the scale, design and layout of the proposal is considered acceptable. There's no unacceptable impact upon the amenity of neighbouring residents. There's no unacceptable impact upon wildlife species, and the parking provision is acceptable with no objections from Hampshire Highways. Therefore, the recommendation is to permit with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I now have 3 members of the public who wish to speak against, but I've got one of those is a statement. 4, is it? Okay, so is that a statement against?
No,
4, okay. In that case, I've got 3, and I will ask Mr. Thomas to come to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure you can see from the plans, going back a few from there, what a tight fit number 13 is on its plot now, without actually having any extensions done to it at all. And for that reason, my objections to the current plans arise from the close proximity of the 2 neighbouring houses, that's number 11 and number 15. The proposed ground floor extension to the rear of the property will extend way beyond the existing footprint and will abut the neighbouring boundaries on both sides, with a resultant loss of light and, I imagine, a sense of being bricked in. In addition, the possible effects of groundworks on unstable land adjoining number 15 on the other side have not, as far as I'm aware, been properly considered by the developer. To the front of the property, there is proposed a balcony. This would appear to be at the same level as the bedroom bay window of adjoining number 11 and very close to it. No amount of privacy glass on this balcony will mitigate the disturbance which could be caused by persons on the balcony at any time of the day or night. I will also mention that one neighbour believes that there may be asbestos in the existing property, and some investigation of that would be justified. I do think these plans are overdevelopment and out of character with the surroundings. More than anything else, I would not wish the current proposals to set a precedent for future developments. Hamble has lost enough of its character already. Thank you.
Josh Phillips.
I think Rob said everything I need to. I
Okay.
agree with that, actually.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. And Mark Farwell.
Thank you very much. Farwell, 15 Satchel Lane. I'd like to make a couple of observations before we start, very similar to what Mr. Thomas just said. We've seen this is the 3rd iteration of the same plan, and there has been no discernible differences made to each iteration, only other than they've laid the foundation for a 4th application, where they will end up getting exactly what they proposed in 1 and 2. Secondly, and I think this is slightly dishonest, by the way, is that these plans, particularly the justification for the side extension on the north flank, there is a compromise apparently. They're going to build footings for a 2-storey extension, for a 1-storey extension with a sloping roof, and it's going to go up to plate level, for starters. It would take nothing, absolutely nothing, to tilt that out to the original plan. It was the original plan that they wanted a 2-storey extension on the side of that house to go virtually from front to back. Secondly, and I think this too is a sleight of hand, by the way, justification in, I think it was application 2, for developing the third story, which was now it's a roof space. It's because there are third story dwellings in Satchel Lane where there are none. And the other justification, of course, was the fact that houses from 3 to 9, they're not two-story extension houses. Well, they are now, of course, but they were previously bungalows. So these houses that go from 11, these are the first two-story houses in Hamble, in Satchel Lane, sorry. These houses from 11 to 19 are two-story detached houses, and even more importantly, 13 and 15 are a pair. They were designed by the same architect and built at the same time. So a proposal to the street scene, and I think in the architect's justification, would need planning permission to rip off the mock Tudor or the, I think he called it pseudo-Gothic facade. But nevertheless, under those circumstances, it would change significantly because it would be the only property of the two-story houses from number 11 through to 25. And they're extending out the back 3 metres, and I don't believe the planning officer's explanation for this, by the way. The loss of light and amenity and privacy. We live right at the back of our house, and those 3 houses from 11 to 15 are in a perfect alignment. There is now overlooking on both sides. Right. You want me to speed up? Right, I need to say 2 more things, and this is the most important thing that hasn't been considered. There is serious ground subsidence under number 15. We've asked 3 times now for a geological survey. I've had one done when we bought the property back in 2020. The house, I couldn't, not that I wanted to, by the way, couldn't get a mortgage on it, and it wasn't an insurable property. We did some work, and we've got it up to where the ground stability is good. So what they're proposing, 2 things. Firstly, they completely levelled the site of all trees, shrubs and foliage, and the subsidence has come back. And they ripped out 2 30-foot Japanese maple trees on the border between number 11 and 13 and us. So already, on both floors in our house, the house is starting to move all over again. And they're going to excavate 150 tonnes from the front to make the car park. And I tell you this, our house will fall down. And I don't understand it. I really don't understand how this has not been taken into consideration. 3 times I've said it. I've done all the calcs on this as well and got a proper report.
Thank you very much. We have one more statement to read out in favour, and then I'll come to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. The statement is from Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, the applicant. Please accept our apologies for not being able to attend today's Planning Committee meeting. We are the current owners of 13 Satchel Lane and have been working with the Council for over 2.5 years on renovating our property to create our long-term family home. We engaged with the LPA for a pre-app to redevelop the existing dwelling and were strongly encouraged towards an Art Deco-inspired design. Although this design was supported at pre-app stage, it was subsequently declined at the formal application. We decided to appeal as we had lost confidence in the advice the LPA had given us and strongly disagreed with some of the reasonings. The appeal was dismissed, but the inspector did not agree with the LPA on all points of refusal. We have therefore gone back to the drawing board with this current proposal, taking account of the LPA previous concerns and the inspector's comments. As a result, we have retained the rear extension at ground and first floor as per the appeal, which the inspector has no issues with, specifically with regards to overbearing or loss of light with immediate neighbours. They also found no issues with the front balcony with regards to overlooking. As such, the LPA have now supported these elements. The new parking area will improve parking and turning on site to allow a greater number of vehicles to park off the road and offer the ability to leave in a forward gear. Although below the required standard, highways have recognised this as an improvement above the existing layout whilst maintaining a green frontage. We have worked closely with the case officer during this application in order to reach a positive decision, and we hope that the committee can also support the scheme so we can progress to develop our long-term family home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Cllr, would you like to come back, please?
Yeah, so I can come back on the rear extensions and the comment on, I'll just go to the site plan here, that the site is too tight for all the proposals. So with regards to amenity space, even with the extensions to the rear, in compliance with quality places, there would be sufficient amenity space for the plot. Also, as detailed in the report as well, the single-storey rear extension, I acknowledge that it is sizable, but it could be constructed under the prior notification route. And also, with the planning appeal, we also have to take into consideration that the planning inspectorate didn't deem these extensions unacceptable in terms of amenities, so we have to take that planning balance, which is why it's been applied today. And I believe Nick's got some comments about subsidence.
Yeah, thank you, Cllr. I thought I'd better say something. The structural issues with subsidence, whilst I recognise it's a problem locally, it's not a planning matter, so it's not a material planning consideration. It's covered by separate legislation, as we picked up on the original planning guidelines slides. It's covered by building regulations, so I just thought I'd better clarify that for members' benefit. The other point I wanted to make, some of the speakers were talking about what could happen in terms of if they got permission, they could do something sleight of hand and build more. That's not what we're considering this evening. We can't consider what can happen in the future. We're considering the application before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nick. Basically, what it means is that whatever we recommend tonight, you can't use the possibility of subsidence as a reason for refusal because it's outside the parameters of the decision-making process for planning. Is that correct? I just wanted to make that clear so that members are aware. Okay, can I ask members for questions or debate if there's no questions?
Can I just check what happened with the bat survey on this one, because I saw originally that the ecology officer had said that there did need to be a proper bat survey, and then for some reason there no longer is a proper bat survey required.
Yeah, I can answer that. So with the original submitted plans, because there were significant works proposed to the roof, the ecologist advised for a preliminary bat survey which recommended further surveys. For whatever reason, the applicant decided not to go down that route. They amended the plans on the request that the scale and character was out of keeping, but also that it wouldn't affect the roof. So therefore, with the amended plans, because there's no disturbance to the original roof, further bat surveys aren't required. However, the ecologist has made it very clear if there are any works to the roof, that bat surveys would be required, whether or not they need planning permission.
Thank you. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it's a question, please. Probably to Nick, I would think. The subsidence really concerns me, actually. Is there... We can't sort of like maybe give planning permission but postpone it until the subsidence is further investigated, dealt with, whichever. We can't put any conditions on.
No, but you possibly could put an informative on the permission, so it's an advice note to the applicant to say there is potential subsidence and you will need to cover this in your building regulations application, if that's suitable for members.
Okay, thank you.
Cllr Cross.
It's just referenced the construction phase, the control contractors. We had problems along by further on at Satchel Lane. The contractors blocking the road, and just outside there was a car park lay-by. It's just whether we can have conditions of control on the build construction, so it's taken up the parking spaces and using that, because
sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, so the pre-commencement condition of the construction management plan will cover that, and that will be controlled, and the applicant would adhere to that, and that includes the parking measures and the blocking of the bend, as you described. So that would be controlled and measured.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, could I open it then for debate? Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, so I still have the same concerns about this application that I had from the last time it was submitted. I feel that it's visually intrusive. It's still going to be visually intrusive. I know the comments about number 3 and number 9, Satchel Lane, with their balconies, and the fact that they're, obviously those properties were bungalows that have been made into sort of modern 2-storey houses, but they're further down. This house is in the middle of 3 houses which, you know, are very similar style, and I think that it's going to really, really upset the street scene. I think it's going to look appalling. I think that also, you know, there are just too many issues with this whole development for me to be able to agree to it. So for that reason, I'm going to say that I object to it.
Yeah, I'm afraid it just doesn't sit well with me. I'm going to second Liz's objection because looking at the proposal on the actual site, it is very, very tight. It's very tight to the boundaries. I know it's been reduced to single story at the back and everything, but I'm just thinking of the whole actual building of it as well, and what Councillor Jarvis said. You know, the gentleman said, sorry, I didn't know your name, but 13 and 15 are a pair. And you can see that, and I think it would be really quite detrimental to the street scene on what is quite a characterful, if you like, lane. So I will second the objection.
Okay. Can I just confirm, Liz, that that was a recommendation? Yeah. Okay, further debate. Councillor Cross.
Really, it's a question. What's Hamble Parish planning? What did they say about it?
So initially they said it was out of keeping. The balcony overlooks a neighbouring property and overdevelopment. With regards to the amended plans, they said whilst it was welcomed the reduction at the roof level and 2-storey the element to the rear here, they still maintained their objection.
Okay. Are there any other comments? No? At this stage? I found this one really difficult. For all the reasons that are given. Can't get used to this microphone, it's hidden. Yeah, I find this one really difficult. I can fully appreciate why members and residents are concerned about it. The issue I have, though, is we can't use subsidence as a reason for refusal, and we can't use any argument that was dismissed or gone against by the inspector, as Cllr has intimated tonight. So if the inspector didn't raise an objection last time, it doesn't stand and hold water on this occasion, because this is clearly a much smaller application in bulk and design than the application that was refused when it was 3 stories and hideous. Yeah, that one. The inspector was quite clear on the reasons for refusal at that time, and it's been explained by Cllr. So I think, from my own personal view, although I have real concerns about it, and I am worried about what's going to happen on the site when they start digging, we are limited to what we can refuse this on. So I'm going to need members to no, I can't take anybody from the audience. What we need is reasons for refusal to substantiate the vote if it goes that way, because our officers have to then go and possibly fight an appeal, and they need those reasons. The 4 reasons that fall within the planning rules. So basically, subsidence is immaterial, and the reasons that the only thing you can consider from the previous appeal decision by when it was refused are those that were picked up by the inspector. So we have to be really clear if we're going to refuse it on the reasons for refusal, so that it can help our officers, because they'll have to formulate an objection if it comes to appeal. I'm just laying the land, I'm not saying anything, I'm just making it clear what your responsibilities are. So can I have reasons for refusal?
My reason for refusal is visually intrusive, but if you don't think that's strong enough.
Well, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. What I need is the reasons that you're giving for a refusal, so that they can be supported, used in an eventual appeal if it comes to that.
Chair, I can also add as well, members can delegate back for the reason for refusal to be agreed as well in this instance, if they should wish to go that way.
So again, sorry.
Members can delegate back for the reason for refusal to be agreed, so we can formulate the reasons.
The detail of the reason for refusal, but the broad idea of idea of what that refusal is and what harm is being caused by the visual impact. If you can give us some ideas what that might be, and then we can delegate the detail of the reason for refusal back if voted for.
We're so close. The street scene, breaking up of the street scene from the original houses, which gives it a break. Not in character with that certain area.
It's certainly a material planning consideration. The visual impact of a property or the extensions to a property and the changes to its character. So if you feel the alterations to particularly the front elevation that give it a more modern look, if you feel that's out of keeping, out of character with the street scene, then it can be hooked to policy DM1 of the local plan. So it's a valid reason for refusal. It's how much weight you give it in the deliberations you have now.
Councillor Cross.
Knowing the area quite well, and some of the monstrosities are built up in between the bungalows, which is completely area of character with that part of the street scene, and how it got planned, I do not know. But the point is, because that house is in between quite a few others, I think it would be detrimental to the area and the form of the house. So it will break up the scene of the house, and because we're trying to keep the such and the conservation around that area uniform. This will break the uniformity. We've had 2 disasters so far. We don't want any more. No, so I think we should keep it as we can.
To assist then in terms of the reason for refusal, because in terms of its modernity, its look, the fact it's sandwiched or very close to traditional looking properties, you could treat it as a very immediate impact, because you do have more modern properties further on, and it's not necessarily out of keeping with those, but in its immediate surroundings, then you could argue it's different and harmful to the character of the area, so that's valid.
Can I also add to that it's also raised, isn't it, as you go round? So it's quite visible, quite sort of dominant in the street scene, because you do have to go up to it. So that could add in overdevelopment. I mean, to me, it just seems a huge building on a small, quite tight, quite narrow site.
Got to be careful, because it is an existing building, and in terms of the additions to the bulk of the front of the property, that's fairly minimal. I think it's the change in its character that's the key. But I do agree it's elevated, and therefore it's visible in the street scene.
It's,
Anything else?
let's just say that it will stick out like a sore thumb between the other three houses. And it's not part of the wishes and the people of Hamble wanted to carry on and keep it as, I know it's very hard to keep as, but do our best to keep it as character of the building and the street scene. And that's what I would go for personally.
Yes? No, you're okay. Before we go to a vote, our legal team here have asked us to speak to planners just to confer with them before we take the vote. So just bear with us a minute or so and then just Okay, members and members of the public, forgive us for the odd moving around. These things need to be right. Our officers have confirmed that there are legitimate reasons for refusal that have been raised by members wishing to object. So we have had no alternative put forward, so I will now go to the vote. So it's been proposed and seconded. Liz proposed to object and Jane O'Sullivan seconded. So unless officers have anything further to say, can I have a show of hands, please?
Can I just ask one question? So are we refusing for the front elevation being out of character and detrimental to the street scene?
It's either or. You've got it's street scene, which is the most appropriate way to go forward on it.
It's going to be brought back to officers to actually confirm the reasons for refusal, I believe, but we will take the vote now. So those for objection. And against and abstain on this one as chair, which is my fault. Okay, thank you very much. That is duly refused. Thank you very much. Okay, we've just got one more item, which is planning appeals, which is we just need to note it. Thank you. Can I have proposed and second that we note the appeal? Yeah, it's Lark BQ Lane. Thank you. Yeah, proposed and seconded. Proposed by Councillor Sullivan, seconded that we note the appeal. Malcolm Cross, all in favour? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. And I duly close the meeting. It's just gone 9:15, my dinner's waiting, and I'm going to be straight on the phone to Tonya.